So with those very quick technical reminders, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jenny Paradise to officially open our session up. Jenny?
Great. Thank you, Jean. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have each and every one of you today with us online for our 16th annual conference. We're on day 3. While we may be hosting today virtually, we know that we are all together in heart, even when apart. My name is Jenny Paradise, as Jean mentioned. I am serving as your moderator for tonight's session. I am currently the interim treasurer on the executive board of directors for AMCSI. I have been with the board for 2 years now. A little bit more about myself. I am a mom of a child who has AMC. She's 7 and her name's Dylan. I do have one other child, and my husband and kiddos, we live in just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Next slide. So some of you may have been a few of the other day events, but if you're joining us for the first time tonight, here's the first 4 days of our conference. The virtual conference is going to run every evening. It started on Sunday the 18th with our public board meeting, and will continue each evening through Saturday the 24th. Each virtual session will include 2 different presentations, both medical and other professionals who work with us that have arthrogryposis. Registration is required, but it is free and open to who wants to join. As Jean mentioned, we'll be live streaming portions of this through Facebook, but would encourage you to register and join us through Zoom. It just has a little bit more of an ability to interact with our speakers. Next slide. Here's kind of the lineup for the last 3 evenings of the conference. We've been asked a few times already when we might be announcing our 2022 location for conference. So just to note that we will be announcing that during conference. It will happen during our closing ceremonies on the 24th. So make sure to join us, and you will not want to miss that. All right. So here's our agenda for this evening. We will be having, again, as I mentioned, 2 presenters. We will be starting off with a presentation from Don Brown, who will speak with us about special needs financial planning. And then our second presenter is Rene Donahoe, who will talk to us about therapy around surgical procedures. So both sessions will have Q&A following, but both presenters are also going to be stopping throughout their presentations to take questions. So as Jean mentioned, just encourage you to put your messages or questions in chat, and we'll be sure to address those throughout. And we will be having a brief break between the 2 presentations as well. All right, next slide. So just a little bit more about AMCSI. So this conference is organized and sponsored by AMCSI. If you're not familiar, that is a nationally recognized 501c3 organization. And really our mission is to provide and encourage more understanding and support just amongst anybody who's impacted with somebody themselves or somebody they love with arthrogryposis. Also to create a higher standard of awareness by having conferences, meetings, helping fund research and such, just to create a higher standard. All right, next slide. So let's pause for a quick minute. I'm interested, as well as some of the other conference planning, just who's all a current member of AMCSI. So hopefully you've seen a poll pop up. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can go ahead and click right on that to answer the question, and then click submit at the bottom.
All right, and Jenny, I can see those responses coming in, and I know some of my family are watching this, so we better see a whole bunch of yeses come into this. All right, so I'll give it just another moment or so. And then for the newcomers who have joined us, I'll just do a real quick, gentle reminder that we're asking all of our guests to stay off video so that we can focus on our speakers today. But hopefully later you'll be able to turn on your camera so we can all wave hello before we close out. All right, Jenny, I think we may have gotten the responses. So let me go ahead and close out the poll. Ooh, 2 more just snuck in. Okay, here we go. We'll go ahead and close it down and let's take a quick look. So it looks like almost half of our attendees are currently members, but a lot of them are planning to join AMCSI.
Great, great. That's great to see so many members here with us today. Please look in the chat for a link on how you can MCSI for those that are interested. And just a reminder that our members do get discounts and early bird access for different events. right, next slide. Just a quick pause to thank everybody. You know, AMCSI wouldn't be where we are without all the generous donations and support from all of you in our community. There's also many ways to support. I don't know about you guys, I love Amazon, so I shop there all the time, but that's one way you can connect through Amazon Smile and have a portion of that each shopping experience be donated to AMCSI. So thank you again for everybody that's continued to help support us over the last 16 years. So one more poll quickly before we jump in. So we'd love to learn a little bit more about where everybody is joining us from and kind of what brought you to attend the conference tonight. So you should see now a second poll with 2 questions that you can go ahead and fill out.
Okay, it looks like they've gotten the hang of it. They are much quicker at responding now. I'm seeing a lot of answers coming in. And remember, you'll just simply scroll through to see all the options and then be sure to hit that submit button at the bottom. There's no wrong answers. We just want to learn a little bit about you. And as I'm starting to see those answers slow down a bit, remember, the more you can share, the better our presenters will help. We'll be able to understand who's joining us and perhaps tailor some of their comments today. All right, so let me go ahead and close this one down and let's take a quick look at those results. So again, it looks like we have another large turnout from the Northeast US, although we've got some great representation from the Southwest and Midwest, and also a large number of international attendees. So that's great. For those of you who are international attendees, feel free to type into the meeting chat and let us know where you're connecting from. I'm sure we'd love to see who's joining us. And then in terms of why people are here today, we have a number of parents of children with AMC, but we do also have a number of adults or individuals who have AMC. And then again, as we've seen in the past, people are also here because they either love or work or know someone with AMC. So that's great to see that range of attendees. So thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's dive in here. Don, you can go ahead and work to share your presentation. Our first speaker will be Don Brown. He's been in the financial services industry for more than 30 years. He has been recognized as an industry leader and is a lifetime member of the $1 Million Roundtable. Educating individuals and families on how to properly plan for dependents with special needs is a primary focus of Don's practice. He is a graduate of Rutgers University with a degree in economics and finance, and he holds a Series 6, 7, 63, and 24 security licenses, along with his life, annuity, accident, and health licenses. He has earned the Chartered Financial Consultant, the Chartered Special Needs Consultant, and Chartered Advisor for Senior Living designations. He will speak with us tonight on special needs financial planning, making the future more secure for your loved ones with special needs. Let's welcome Don, and we're excited to hear. Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Jenny, are we coming over good audio-wise? Perfect. Excellent. Before I get started, there's some important things I'd like to do. Number one is I want to thank some people. I want to thank Michelle Schaefer. Michelle and I met years ago. We've become friends since then, and I've been fortunate enough to attend the conference for multiple years. So I'm extremely happy to be with you again. I will tell you, I'm saddened that we can't be together personally. Going to your conference is always inspirational and uplifting, and I hope we're together again next year in 2022. I also want to thank Ani, who's on with us. I want to thank Jean, who's helped set us up. For those of you that know Jean, she's very technically adept, which intimidates me, so it made me very nervous. But then when I found out that we had Jenny Paradise moderating my event, I felt much better. So I want to thank you all. I also recognize that when we're talking to our group here among family and friends, that we have a wide range of issues that we deal with. Some severe, some not so severe. So we're happy to answer any questions as we go. Am I okay?
Yep, now you're, yep.
We'll address things in a general nature. We'll happily address any questions as we go. And we'll make sure that we offer everybody a chance to get their own questions answered if they're of a personal nature. So without any further ado, let's get started. We have 3 ground rules. Every workshop we do, we want to accomplish 3 things. Number 1, we obviously want to educate you. You're sharing time and you're actually sacrificing a part of your evening to come speak with us. So we want to make sure we deliver what you came for, which is you get educated in some of the things that you should be aware of. Number 2 is we want to give you at least one actionable item where tomorrow you can actually go do this and say, I'm glad I was there. And number 3, we don't want this presentation to be a speech where I'm talking at you. So we want to have some fun along the way. We're going to ask you some questions, and we'd like you to pay attention because if you do it well, there's some cash and prizes along the way. So without any delay, let's get going. Every time I try to do that, oh, there we go. Okay, so when we're talking about caring for someone with special needs, tonight we're talking about our AMC family. So when you are a caregiver of someone with AMC, we want to talk about what is important to you. And we know that you're the one that's looking out for their best interest. I am inspired and I love to see people at the conference because it's where old friends get together, it's where families talk, and the greatest thing about those conferences I always get out is having parents get the chance to speak to each other and recognize that somebody's walked in your shoes. But we also know that there's something that's very important that happens, and that thought is when you're caring for someone, particularly someone who's younger and the future's got more question marks than answers, the question always rolls in the back of your mind, what happens when you're not around? And we recognize that that probably happens when it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep. But the idea is we also recognize that you're dealing with so many issues in the present. Long-range planning typically doesn't get past next week, next month, etc. So that's kind of what we're here to do tonight. Every family is going to go through these steps or at least deal with these things at some point during the course of their life. So tonight what we want you to do is we want to go through the 10 steps that every family that has someone with special needs in it or a loved one is going to address or should address or have to address at some point. So you can literally sit back and say to yourself, I've done some of these things, I've not done some of these things, or we need to make some adjustments. Also in the end, we're going to ask you if you'd like a full special needs funding coach kit, and we'll show you what's in that. And there's quizzes and brochures that are helpful. So if you want a full kit, share with us a mailing address for you, and we'll get that to you as well. So step 1 is plan for the future. That is Captain Obvious, I get it. But we also know that regardless of the degree of challenges that you face in your family, regardless of the challenges your loved one with AMC faces, making a plan, looking towards the future, and having a plan is always, always, always better than not having one. But when we're talking about making a plan, there are some specific things that we want to make sure that we deal with. Number 1, obviously, is medical treatments. You're all dealing with them at certain stages, certain degrees, and at all times. When that person's going to become an adult and hopefully be independent and live on their own, what supports do we need to plan for and put in place to make sure that those things can happen successfully? Second one, of course, is education. When children are in school, in their state up to age 21, the support systems come from entitlement, which is the Department of Education. When you become an adult, what's going to happen beyond that high school education level? Is your loved one going to attend a college? Is there going to be a certain place or a certain vocation that they want to become involved in? And how do you plan for that so you can have a successful experience and a successful transition from that child to an independent adult? And lastly, of course, is housing. Where will your loved one live? What sort of place will suit them best? Is it living at home with you? Is it living in sort of a group home setting? Is it living independently with supports? But the more we answer those questions and the more we're able to put them down on paper, how we're going to plan for those, the more successful our outcomes will be. I can assure you we've done tons of research, and the research shows that 100% of the time, having a plan is better than not having one. And hoping and wishing is not the plan. So before we move to the next step, we want to get you engaged and involved. Some of you may know this answer because you've dealt with it. Some of you may have no idea yet, if you have youngsters, why we're even asking this question. But here's the question we want to ask you. We want to ask you to type your answer in the chat. And the first one who answers correctly, we're going to give our first prize to. So here's the question. What is the maximum amount of assets that an individual can have in their name and qualify for Medicaid-related supports? What's the maximum amount of assets an individual can have in their name and still qualify for Medicaid?
All right. So as Don mentioned, the meeting chat is open, and ooh, we have got some answers coming in, and I can see who's responding. So I believe, Don, you said the first name who got it right
First one got it right.
wins, right? Now we've got two totally different groups of answers.
Okay.
So half of the audience says it's $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Other half of the audience says it's $50,000.
Okay. The other half of the audience may be from our international audience, which could be different. But in the United States, the correct answer is $2,000.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to message directly the person who got it right so she can share her contact info and we can get that prize to her.
Exactly. Now, here's where we have some fun, and I want to make sure, let me see if I can stop this for a second. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. Whoever answered that question, we are going to send you a Powerball lottery ticket. And the current prize is $161 million. But Elizabeth and I always make a deal with everyone that we give a ticket to, and this is our deal. If you win, it's your moral obligation to hire Elizabeth and I as your financial managers. We will make sure you're never poor. If you win, the cash option is $116 million. So Elizabeth and I will scrape by on 1% a year. You could pay us $1 million. We will manage your money exclusively, and we will make sure you're never poor. So we are going to take it on faith that everyone's going forward with that moral obligation. But the correct answer is $2,000. Now, why is that the first thing that we bring up? Because those of you that have children that may need those Medicaid supports, and here's where AMC, there's a whole range of those types of supports that are necessary. But in order to be able to accomplish that, you can only have $2,000 in your name. So there's the first hurdle of special needs planning that any family that's doing it has to address. Because we all realize that there may be supports that our loved one needs to be independent. We want the best quality of life we can have for them. We want them to have the best level of independence that they can achieve. But if they need the Medicaid-related supports to achieve that outcome, now it has to be financially managed properly. How do we be able to get a job and earn income, yet not have $2,000 of assets in our name? So in the short range, we can talk about things like an ABLE account. If you're not familiar with that, we're going to send you information on the kit. It's a way that you can establish an account, put up to $15,000 a year in it, plus if you're working, you can add another $27,000 a year in it. And whatever those assets are in that account, Medicaid will not be able to touch them for benefit purposes while you're living, which means you can still qualify for the supports that you need. And we'll talk to everyone individually about ABLE accounts. We have a whole workshop on them, and we'll announce those workshops going forward if somebody wants to attend. But I bring this to your attention for two very important reasons. One, as your child advances and we go in the transition phase, which is typically age 15 to age 21, we now have to make assessments on whether or not Medicaid-related services are going to be imperative and necessary for us to be able to have that person achieve independence. And if so, we need to make sure that we qualify for that and we plan for that. Equally important, and here is where our first action step comes in. if you have an adult that is your dependent, your loved one, your child, and they are currently receiving Medicaid benefits, or you fully expect your young child, when they become an adult, to require that level of benefits, then they cannot have monies go to them over $2,000. Now, look on the screen and you see something that says Beneficiary Designations. Here's my laser pointer. See, it says Beneficiary Designations. And here's why we bring that up. Most of us, if we work at a company that provides benefits, we're going to get two types of benefits. One is going to be group life insurance. Two is going to be some type of retirement plan. Each of those benefits, whether you purchase them individually or whether you purchase them or receive them through employment, you name a beneficiary. Most of us know that. We write down the name of that primary beneficiary. Typically, it's a spouse or a relative or someone we name directly. What many people don't recognize is there's a little box on most of those forms. We've been doing this for 30 years. We do benefits for companies all the time. That little box on an individual application or a group life beneficiary form says that if your primary beneficiary dies and you have not named a contingent beneficiary, then those benefits go equally to your children. Now, those of you that have adults that may be receiving Medicaid benefits, I want to tell you a story that we run into all too often, either through attorneys we work with or families that we're working with, where mom and dad never realized this. Their sibling is now thriving, they're living independently or semi-independently, but they're living and requiring Medicaid benefits. Suddenly they inherit money that's more than $2,000, and it's when they've lost a parent. And now their Medicaid support benefits are immediately taken away. And this is the easiest thing to take care of and address, particularly if you have a child that has not become an adult yet. You do not want to leave that child with Amcsi as a direct beneficiary of any of your retirement plans or your life insurances. And while we're on that topic, let's take a look where it says inheritance. Sometimes what we do is we have loving family members, well-intentioned friends and relatives who thought it would be a very good idea to leave our dependent with special needs in their estate. And if that child with special needs or that adult with special needs is scheduled to receive Medicaid-related benefits or receiving those support services, we don't want that to happen. We want to guide them to put that into something called a special needs trust or other related vehicles. But that's the first step we want to bring to your attention, because it's something you can do tomorrow. Call up your employer, get your change of beneficiary forms, and even if you need to rewrite who your primary is and name contingent beneficiaries that are not your dependent with Amcsi, if Medicaid-related benefits and supports are either in their present or future. We turned off the pointer, and we got to the next step. All right, so step 3 is have a family meeting. We recognize that when we have a family member with special needs, then raising that family member is a family affair. Everyone gets involved, everybody's doing their part. Moms and dads are typically doing so many things that we call unconsciously competent that they just take that for granted. But when we're talking about who's going to look out for our dependent and loved one when we're gone, like we would or we want to, that also requires a family meeting. And we will give you a document to help you go through that family meeting that's called a letter of intent. But basically what we teach our families is if we're hoping that maybe one of their siblings is going to be looking out for them, maybe they're going to be looking after their day-to-day activities, then we want to make sure that a couple things are possible. Number 1, are they physically able? Number 2, are they geographically able? Are they going to stay in close proximity to that sibling or relative? And number 3, are they financially able? And that's where our planning should come in, that if we're gone, we want to make sure that if we're going to ask somebody to help and look out for their better behalf, that we're planning on how to do that both financially and practically. Okay, this is a good spot to pause for any initial questions if you'd like.
Yeah, Don, we actually have a couple related to step 2 and 3. So let me start with those.
Okay.
For step 2, is the $2,000 across everything? What if there's a shared property and my AMCer has their name on the deed along with other non-AMC family members?
That's a great question. And the answer is, yeah, it does unfortunately go across all assets. And we also recognize that we're speaking tonight to some adults with AMC, and they're in their own particular situation where we're not receiving Medicaid benefits now, or if we are, we already know this, but if there's a possibility in the future, then there's long-range planning that could be done for that, and we just want to have people aware that that's the case. But unfortunately, it does go across all assets, but now if that knowledge is now known, there are things that you can do that we're going to talk about tonight. You can change those titles, you can change ownership, you can have that asset or that piece of the asset go into a special needs trust. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about in general in future steps. Great question, though.
All right, thank you. The other one that's related to step 3 was, do you have a template for family meetings? And how do you navigate the complexities where maybe one set of grandparents doesn't want the other to know what finances they've given a grandchild?
That's a great, those are excellent questions. Sounds like we've had people have these meetings before. So for the family meeting, what we do in our planning with our families, Jenny, is we provide people with what's called a letter of intent. Now, a letter of intent is not a legal document, so we're going to talk about it later, but it's kind of a playbook. And by going through that, that's very good planning to bring up with anyone that's going to be involved in it. Now, in terms of finances, you're right. Sometimes moms and dads don't want each other to know if they're divorced, or grandparents don't want anybody else to know. And there's ways to do that where they're either naming one legal document, like a special needs trust, as beneficiary, and that's not public information, so no one will ever find out. Or there are also ways where grandma and grandpa can set up their own special needs trust if Medicaid support related issues are important. Or there's ways that they can fund ABLE accounts with smaller amounts along the way. So we're always able to open up our planning meetings for not only our families with parents and siblings, but also if grandma and grandpa want a consultation or you want to ask indirect questions, we're happy to do it. Those are great questions.
All right, great. Maybe just one more. I think the others are a little more general, but I think related to step 2, what about 529 plans or college savings? Do those count?
Yes. Here's where they count. So let's clarify. If you have a 529 plan that's for your dependent and that dependent has AMC, that money is not in their name. That money is in your name with them as beneficiary. So in all likelihood, if it can still be used for advanced education if you want, it could also be used for secondary education. More importantly, to your long-range planning, if you have a 529 plan and it's not going to be used for the current beneficiary, you are legally allowed to change it to another beneficiary. And more important, at least in terms of connections to special needs planning, the ABLE account that we mentioned, it's called Achieving a Better Life Experience. Any individual can have one ABLE account. They can deposit up to $15,000 a year in that account, and whatever's in that account does not exclude them from any Medicaid-related services. The good news is they're both on the same IRS code level, which means if your 529 plan for your dependent with AMC is not going to be used for education, you are allowed to move it into an ABLE account. And one of the uses of an ABLE account is actually education, so it'll actually broaden the uses for those monies. Excellent questions, Jenny.
Great, thank you so much.
We have a good group. Okay, we'll move along. Step 4 is create a team. And I want you to take a look and see what we've got up there, and also thank Elizabeth for our great graphics. We've improved so much. But when we talk about creating a team, here's what we want to talk about. having financial professionals like myself or other qualified people, knowing what a special needs attorney is and how to use them to your benefit, coordinating with the things you're already doing as far as healthcare professionals, guidance counselors, career counselors, clinicians, and educators. What I want you to imagine is everyone sitting around a big table talking about one thing, and that's the success of your loved one. But you have the ability to coordinate that, and you have the ability to have those professionals work together, and we'll help show you how to do that, but more importantly, want you to be aware that you coordinating that allows you to have better outcomes. Having a path to be able to do that makes it easier for you to say, am I doing this right? Step 5 is to get additional resource support. We're not going to belabor this because you're already here. We're so happy that you found the AMC organization. We're happy that you're a part of tonight's workshop, so we know you're already doing that on a broad case. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about 2 government agencies that you're going to have to be aware of. And as we said, depending on where you are in your spectrum of life, it's either in your future, present, or past. And what we're talking about is government benefits. And the 2 we're going to talk about specifically is Medicaid, which we already discussed. Those that are adults, if they're receiving any Medicaid-related support, you know this already. Those people who have a loved one who's a child, all of the things that happen in your child's school to support your child's education come from the Department of Education. When your child turns age 21, any of those support type services, whether it's job coaches, transportation, living support, etc., all come through Medicaid. And you can see the list up there, not only medical treatments, but supplies, equipments, etc. So we want you to be aware of it. And if you have that Medicaid.gov website, you can go in there and they have a very good search engine for any specific items or ideas or questions that you may have. And certainly in a consultation with us, we'll try to answer any questions that you have as well. So now we're going to come to our next question. So everybody sharpen your brain pencils. We have on the screen Social Security. Now, if you are an individual who's a child, you turn age 18, and it is not expected that you are going to have the ability to earn a living where you can support yourself fully, you are eligible to apply for SSI. So here's the question we're going to ask and see if anybody can answer accurately. Who can tell us the difference between SSI and SSDI? What's the difference between SSI and SSDI?
All right, Don, I need to get you good like Jeopardy theme music while we wait for people to type that in. So just a gentle reminder, we may have had a few people join us a little bit later, but you can pop open the meeting chat in Zoom, look for the technical moderator in that drop down at the bottom, and you can send a direct reply to me. And then I'm watching and I will let Don know who gets it in there first.
Well, and here's what we'll do for the future. We'll create a whole board, Medicaid, investments, legal. We'll pick 3 people and they'll be our contestants and then everybody can watch.
Oh, I like it. I like it. So I do have an answer that came in and I'm waiting. I think this just takes a little bit more typing to respond. So we'll wait. And
it does.
There's no harm in guessing, right? They're not going to get in trouble if they get it wrong.
Nobody's going to expose you for guessing. No one's going to do anything as far as criticisms. We're going to clap at your participation.
That's right. And Don, we did have somebody ask if you could repeat the question one more time.
Yes. Can you briefly explain the difference between SSI and SSDI?
Okay. And I'll be totally honest with people. If you don't know, you can also put that in. So that way we know we're not waiting for everybody to still be typing. So I see a wide range in answers.
Okay.
Here. It seems as though most of them are shaking out with one general set of differences, but some people have some very specific pieces of information. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me summarize a bit. It looks like one camp is really saying that SSI is based on income. and asset levels, with disability sort of benefits going to people who haven't worked, as opposed to SSDI, which seems to kick in when someone becomes disabled after they've been working.
That's the correct answer, Jean. So the first person that said SSDI is what you and I would receive if we had a long-term disability, and the amount of support we would receive is based on our income history. So SSDI is Social Security disability income.
All right, awesome, thanks.
So now, if you look on the screen, SSI is called Supplemental Security Income. SSI is designed for those people who have become adults who are not able currently or may never be able to earn enough income that is above the poverty level. So an individual who's a minor that turns age 18 with any special need, they are eligible to apply for SSI. Why is that important? Well, one, the SSI benefit is up to $800 a month and is specifically designed to be used for primary resources, food, shelter, clothing. So if you apply for SSI, your dependent is living with you and you are not charging them rent or room and board, Social Security is happy to thank you and reward you by decreasing that SSI by up to a third. The other reason it's important to know about SSI is if an individual qualifies for SSI, they will automatically qualify for Medicaid-related services. Now, we recognize that in our world and with our families, some people may never need any of this, which is great. There's other planning we talk about. But for the whole range, we want that generally so every family knows that those two benefits are out there and what those qualifications and limitations are. Do we want to go to questions before we move on, Jenny?
Yeah, let's do that. We have a few more added on here. So the first one is, what if I'm not in a financial position to save much for my child? Is there an age where if I haven't yet set up savings for them that I shouldn't bother? It's hard to save money when medical costs seem to never end.
Yeah, and those are excellent questions. And I will tell you that the first year we went out to the AMC conference, we did our workshop and people filled out evaluations. Years number 2 and on, we got smarter and we offered consultations the next day for any family that wanted to talk to us. Now what we'll do for everyone is we'll offer consultations by phone and Zoom so we can address these issues. But Jenny, here's the real answer to that question. Regardless of how much planning you've done, regardless of whether your dependent is a child or an adult or you're the adult itself, the best time to plan was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And there isn't an economic level where planning doesn't make a significant difference. So we recognize that you're so busy with medical expenses, with challenges, etc., you don't get a chance to take care of yourself. You don't get a chance to take care of your own finances at times. And that's why we call ourselves Special Needs Funding Coach, because if you think about what a coach does, if you're a professional, they're coaching you to be a champion. For us, that means championing your own family's planning and showing you how to do it without having you figure it out on your own. I know it's a general answer, but I hope it helps.
Yes, great. Thank you. All right. Next one is, I'm not eligible for Medicaid because I work full time and I have a 401k.
Excellent.
Even with the supplemental needs trust, I'm not eligible. So what am I eligible for?
Yeah.
Even waiting 5 years, my 501k isn't excluded. Should I just never have a 401k?
We've run into that question a lot, and we're working with clients right now dealing with the same thing. It's an individual situation, but let me answer it as best I can so I'm giving what I hope is a usable answer. If you're currently working now and you don't qualify for SSI or Medicaid, that's terrific. Then none of this should be an issue. However, if that support is in your future, meaning there is a possibility that you may need that support at some time in the future, then there's individual planning that should be done. An ABLE account might be the best way to fund anything over and above what your company's 401k match is. And then there are things that are called first-party special needs trust if that becomes necessary. But that's more long-range planning. So the idea is, if I'm in a situation now where I'm independent and I'm working full-time and I have benefits and I don't have SSI because I'm working, I don't need it. I don't have Medicaid-related support benefits because I don't require them, or I'm not qualifying and I'm surviving. Those are good things. If it's a future reference where, hey, someday we're going to need help, then that planning should take place, and we should talk about that on an individual basis. It's a great question. Right now, continue to do what you're doing. Talk to us about an ABLE account. Find out what the match formula is for your 401k so we don't leave free money on the table. And let's talk about the other monies that you are putting in the 401k over and above that. What's the best place to put them? And there are a couple answers to that.
Great. Thank you, Don. We'll take one more and then we can go to your next slide.
You got it.
For a special needs attorney, I was quoted $8,000 for a supplemental needs trust. Is that the average?
No. Now, I don't know where that person is from. I can't quote attorney fees. We're not attorneys. We don't do the wills and the trust, etc. And all the attorneys are different. Here's what I will tell you, however. We are members of the Academy of Special Needs Planners, which means we have connections to attorneys all over the country. And if you have a consultation with us, not that I'm trying to sell that, but if you need a special needs attorney based on that consultation, we'll introduce you to at least one or two. And you can interview them. Don't be afraid to interview them before you engage them. You don't have to be intimidated. And ask them what they would charge and what that charge entails. Because we've seen anything from $1,000 for a simple will or power of attorney up to $9,000, $12,000 for things like advocacy, guardianships, conservatorships, and full planning, depending on the circumstances. But I will tell you, just from a knee-jerk reaction, $8,000 seems to be a pretty high number.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's move to step 7. Now, if you haven't figured this out yet, when we're talking about special needs planning, whether it's you as an individual or for your loved one, there's two sides to this. There's the financial side, which we can talk about individually and work with people all day long. And then there's the legal side, which we can practically address, but you need to take care of that legal side with a qualified attorney. So for the next couple slides, we're going to talk about estate planning. But Jenny, we're going to do it in such a way that you're never going to forget estate planning. I want you to be able to go talk to an attorney. I want you to know what a will is. I want you to know what a trust is. And I want you to never be intimidated about what they are and what they do. So let's have a little fun and see if we can give away millions in the process. So what we're going to talk about first is your will. So everybody knows what a will is. I know in our practice, 70% of our families say they're going to get a will and they never get around to it for various reasons. But what I want to do now is I want to talk about what a will is and what a will does. So here's where we're going to open up the question. And the question is, will equals, and you're going to type in the chat a one-word answer. Give me a one-word definition for a will. And if somebody gets the definition right, we're going to give them a chance to win $160 million.
Oh boy. So words are coming in now. I will say
only the appropriate ones, Gene.
I wish we had a word cloud for this one because they're
all
varying. They're all over. And they're so variable that it's almost hard for me to group them. Some of them are a little scary.
Okay.
I will say that a number of people have indicated the legal aspect of it, that it's some sort of a legal document. And then it looks as though a number of other people talk about security or control or sort of finality about what will happen.
Okay. Does anybody have a 4-letter definition that starts with the letter N?
No, but we've had a few more coming in here, including wish,
Wish. Okay.
plan, and then there are a number of people talking about inheritance.
Okay. So
We had an N. Shall I read it? It just
Go
came
ahead.
in.
go ahead.
It says NOLO. NOLO.
I don't know what that is, but
Okay.
but the things that you talked about, legal document, we can't even include because that's 2 words, but you're right, it is a legal document. But the things that we were talking about, security, planning, that's what a will accomplishes. So what I want to do is I want everyone to write this down in their notes. A will equals note, N-O-T-E. A will is a note. So you can talk about all the legalities that are going to be in a will. You can talk about all the complexities that attorneys may bring up. A will is nothing more than a note. Gene, if you were leaving Elizabeth and I to watch your house because you were going away for the weekend, you'd leave us a note, right? The note would say, here's where we're going, don't call, right? But in all seriousness, here's where we are, here's the doctor's number, here's the neighbor's number, here's where the fuse box is, those types of things, okay? Well, a will is your note, and you're never coming back. A will is your note, and you're never coming back. So, what are the 3 things a will does? First one is, it says who gets your stuff. Clearly, you're able to say who gets your belongings. That's what you do in a will. Typically, mom and dads, when they have young children, everything goes to each other. Now, one of the things we'll talk about is, if you remember back in step 2, we talked about beneficiaries of retirement plans and insurances, etc. We want to remind everybody that does not go through your will. So if you have a retirement plan at work that names one of your relatives beneficiary, but your will says you want another relative to get your retirement plans, the beneficiary is going to take priority. It's called contract. So things like insurances and retirement plans and IRAs do not go through your will. But step 1, a will is your note. Who gets your stuff? Step 2, who becomes guardian of your dependents? This is the big reason that our families sometimes don't get a will when their children are young, because they don't want to have the argument that who would be guardian. So they just never do it. Now, for those of you that are going to have a dependent who's an adult that you need to take guardianship for, which hopefully is no one on this call or a small minority, but if that's the case, then you're also going to name who's going to become guardian after you're gone. And we deal with lots of people with lots of different challenges. And many times here in the Northeast, we're doing presentations and workshops and working with families that have people with autism. And what we find all too many times is, if they don't name a successor guardian, the guy with the robe gets to decide, which means somebody in court's going to decide, and it may not be the person that you want. In our situation, we hope it doesn't happen, and we hope you don't need it, but that's the second thing a will does. The last thing a will does is, a will's your note, and it says, who are you going to make do this? Who's going to be your executor? So, a will is your note, who gets your stuff, who becomes guardian of your dependents, and who's your executor. Now we're going to move on to trusts. And if you see on the page, let me get my cool laser pointer, okay? We're naming something called a special needs trust specifically. And what we're going to do is, we're going to talk about what a special needs trust is and what it does. But before we get into that, we have seen too many things about trusts. We have heard too many complications about trust. And we meet too many families that say, oh, I don't need a trust because we don't have a lot of money. We're not rich, and trusts are for rich people. When you talk about having a family and assets, nothing will be further from the truth. When you talk about having a dependent and loved one with special needs, it's even more important. So now let's open it up. If a will equals note, trust equals, and give us a one-word definition for a trust. Trust equals, and give us one word. Gene, I'm making you work hard tonight. I'm sorry.
Oh, you are. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I am starting to see some answers come in. And remember, you'll use that to drop down in the meeting chat and send it to the technical moderator. And I'm seeing some, again, wide range in answers. Hard to group these again. So Don, if you could repeat the statement for me.
Okay. Give us a one-word definition for a trust.
Okay. I have the words. I'm just going to read them out loud.
Go ahead.
And I want you to show me excitement if I get one of them right. I've got bucket.
Bucket. Somebody's been to my workshop before. That's a winner.
Woohoo! All right. Well then, we won't go any further.
And Elizabeth said it may have been her that answered that, so we're going to hit her with a stun gun right now. Okay.
That's for you, Gene, not an answer.
But now, on your notepad, you have will equals note. Now I want you to write trust equals bucket. Now, why do I want you to write that? Because you can have 3-hour conversations about what trusts are, all different types of trust. There's family trust, there's dynasty trust, there's this, that, and the other trust. At the end of the day, a trust is a bucket. Now, what does a bucket do? First thing a bucket does is it holds stuff. So when we're talking about a trust, what is a trust going to hold? A trust is going to hold the stuff that you want to put in it that you intend for your loved ones. A special needs trust is a specifically designed and worded trust for the benefit of an individual with special needs. Why? Same reason we already talked about. If that individual needs Medicaid-related supports to successfully live and survive, then we want to be able to support them beyond that. And assets that go into a special needs trust, again, are not subject to Medicaid. So families could have millions of dollars in a trust that's intended for their son or daughter or loved one with special needs, and it doesn't matter how much is in there. As long as that trust qualifies, and we're going to talk about what that means in a minute, then doesn't matter, the government doesn't get that money, and the person still qualifies for all of the support benefits. But what is the other thing that a trust does? The other thing a trust does in the form of the bucket that we're talking about is the bucket protects what's in it from outside sources, right? So what outside sources will be looking to protect those assets from? First one we already mentioned is the government. Second one is unscrupulous people. Third one is civil litigation. Too many times we've worked with families and their initial indication was, well, we need to leave assets for our son or daughter or our loved one with special needs, but we're just going to leave it to their sibling, and their sibling will look out for them and take care of the money. So we don't really need to go through all of that. Those are called gifts of moral and legal obligation. They're not legal gifts. You morally want them to use that money. There's two problems with that. One, there's no way of guaranteeing that that money's used for what you intended it for. And two, if those assets are now in your child's name, your special needs dependent sibling's name, they are now subject to civil litigation. What do I mean? Too many times we have come across families and situations where assets were left to a sibling, and a year later, that was the year that the sibling spouse decided they want a divorce. Suddenly, assets that you left to a sibling to help your other sibling are now part of divorces, what you never intended. We meet families all the time when they're setting up their estate planning and they say, well, I'm going to leave this money to my son or daughter, whether it's special needs or not. And when we remind them that after the money's in their son or daughter's name, then it could be part of a divorce, suddenly a trust becomes imperative. Because a trust can determine where that money goes and it stays in what's called bloodlines. Now let's talk about this bucket for a minute in terms of what a special needs trust is. A special needs trust is specifically designed and must be done by a qualified special needs attorney because It cannot pay for food and shelter, and it cannot pay for any programs that could be paid for by government support services. If that trust does not have that language in it, it will not qualify. Now, what do I mean by qualifying? I want you to think about something practically. This trust will be read by someone at Social Security after you pass away, because that's when the trust is going to get funded and be used for your dependent with special needs. And if somebody from Social Security who's a layperson says that trust doesn't qualify, then all the assets that are in that trust are deemed to be direct to your special needs dependent. And I want you to think about something that we already know. When these situations arise, there's only two things that solve them, and they're time and money. And if this was your trust and it's being read because you're not here, that means you're not there to control that. And it's a disaster. The reason we bring this up is when you're doing this important estate planning, this is not the place to be penny wise and pound foolish. If anyone's ever been involved in a trust, whether you were a beneficiary of a trust from a family member, whether you set up a family trust, trust has common language in it. It's called Health, Education, Maintenance, and Support. It's called HEMS. Health, Education, Maintenance, Support. A special needs trust cannot have that in it. That's why it's so important to not only know what a special needs trust is, if one is in your future or in your planning, to have a qualified attorney draw up that trust, and then furthermore, specifically plan for how it's going to get funded. Okay. I'm being guided by Elizabeth that we should see if there are questions at this point.
Yes. Just to follow up from the person who asked earlier about the cost for the attorney.
Yes.
We had two people just commented, just to close that loop, that one of them had a special needs attorney, is doing a will and trust for our family in Pennsylvania, was $6,000. And then another person commented that a special needs attorney cost them $12,000 in 2015. And that included first and third part trusts for their son and trust for both herself and her husband.
Yeah, that's probably somebody, and I don't want to speak to it specifically, but that's someone who had a special needs dependent that either got a civil settlement or got a medical malpractice settlement, which means there were two trusts that had to get set up. That was probably the sophistication of the expense. And if there was an additional family trust, that means there were 3 trusts that were set up. But make no mistake, these people are accurate. This is not inexpensive. Here in New Jersey, we have some firms that work in the special needs community that do those types of things for $2,500, $4,000. If they're doing something other legal work or advocacy, there's separate charges. So it clearly depends on the range, but if you're dealing with this the first time, clearly we advise you to interview at least 2 attorneys. Get 2 different prices. And we will give you questions to ask, but you think you probably know them. How many special needs trusts have they done? Have they worked with families with an Amcsi dependent before? Those are the things you would want to know, so you're getting specifically what you want out of that planning.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Next question is, can you move funds out of a trust? What if there's a financial issue or emergency and we need to access those funds?
Okay. I'm not sure about the emergency that we're describing, but here's what we would tell you. When you do a trust, you can do an irrevocable trust, which means once the assets are in there, they cannot come out. Or you can do what's known as a revocable trust, which means we can change it. And let's be honest, every time we're drawing up a special needs trust, the attorney, the family, and if we're involved, we're hoping we tear it up someday, which means we don't need it anymore. But to answer that person's question, what we would want to do when you're setting up a trust is you would want to set that trust up, but you would want it to be predominantly what's known as a testamentary trust, which means it wouldn't get funded until you pass away. If we have 2 parents and they're looking after their child, then we know as long as one of them's got the breath of life in them, they're going to be overseeing and looking for their support. It's typically, and we know everyone's different, particularly in the Amcsi community, but typically that trust is going to be needed when the second of our parents pass away, which means ideally it would be funded at that time, so there should not be assets that go in the trust that have to come out for an emergency. Now, if other relatives are going to leave assets and put them in the trust, that's absolutely fine, but that means those assets were designed for that individual with special needs, so the money's only coming out for their benefit. One thing I will mention, however, though, which is pretty cool, is if there are assets in a special needs trust, you are allowed to take $15,000 per year out and put it into an ABLE account. So if we have someone that's working, but they're not employed to the extent that they're earning enough money to live independently and that additional support's necessary, that's a very good way to be able to enable someone to handle their day-to-day expenses. And you can transfer assets from the special needs trust to an ABLE account once a year. Okay.
They can go longer if needed.
Okay. We're coming to the end. Any other questions you want to hit?
15 minutes.
There's two, but we can maybe hold those till the end if you want to keep moving.
Yeah, I think we got another 10 minutes. And step 9's easy for us. Guardianship should not be an issue for most of us. If we have an individual that has special needs and we know that they're just not going to be able to take care of themselves as an adult, their challenges and their conditions are that severe, then that's when guardianship will become an issue. We don't have opinions about guardianship. In the AMC community, we don't think that should be much of an issue for many of our families. So we'll just let you know that if it is an issue, then that's something you'll need to deal with when your child becomes 18. Here's what I would tell everybody, though. Even if you have children that are not AMCers, but they are children and they're becoming adults and they're heading off to college, at the very least, I would suggest a medical power of attorney. Because with the HIPAA laws, what that says is when an individual goes from 17 to age 18, they are adults, which means they can make their own decisions monetarily and for health care. So, God forbid, your dependent was away at school or out on some project or program or trip, and they get hurt and go to the hospital, you rush in to try to take care of everything, and some hospital representative says because of HIPAA laws, we can't help you. So all we want you to do is be aware that this situation exists. We are recognizing in the AMC community, guardianship should not be an issue in most cases. But let's say you've gone through this workshop and you say, okay, you've convinced me I need to do some planning. And I need to recognize that I'm going to ask someone else, family member, friend, relative, to step into my shoes as caretaker. How do I make sure that I do that the best way possible? And back to our slide when we talked about family meeting. What do I discuss in these family meetings if I'm asking somebody to step into that role? So hopefully some people have heard of this. If you haven't, we'll talk about it for a few minutes. It's called a letter of intent. So if we go back to a will is our note, a trust is our bucket, a letter of intent in the special needs funding coach world is the playbook. It's the thing that's going to make the will and the trust work. And in our circumstances, we have a document that's 38 pages long. Now, I'm not telling you that to intimidate you. I'm telling you that because if you have that document, you're not going to miss anything. Letters of intent could be a one-page note. Letters of intent for those families that are more medically involved could be videos showing people how to help your loved one. Our letter of intent's 38 pages so you don't miss anything. I guarantee you if you go through that document, everything's already in your head. What are your opinions on dating? What are your opinions on religion? What are your opinions on marriage? What are your opinions on living, housing, etc.? All the things that are in your head, we now want to make sure that you're putting down on paper. So if you're asking someone else to step into your shoes someday, you're giving them the best possible chance of succeeding. And by doing that long-range planning, you're also providing them the resources to have that outcome be the way you wanted it to be. So if you're thinking, if I've not started this process, how do I do it? We've talked about it already. There's two sides to it. There's the legal side, where we don't do those wills, we don't do trust, but you need to make sure, please, that you deal with a qualified special needs attorney. If you have one, terrific. If you interview one, make sure they're members of the Academy of Special Needs Planners or the Special Needs Alliance or the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. If you need a referral, we'll be happy to give you one. And then on the other side of it, it's working with a financial professional that knows about special needs. We do this all across the country. We have associates on our team. I'm going to encourage you to go to our website and see our team approach on how we do this for families. But we want to let you know we don't do this in like a bubble. This makes sure that we coordinate everything else that you're trying to do with what you're trying to do for your family and, more importantly, your dependent that may need your support. So how do we help? Number one, we introduce you to nonprofits. You don't need much more than what you've already been introduced to. But we will tell you that if you are dealing with some of these things, like Medicaid-related services, like SSI, etc., there are lots of resources. The ARC is a great resource for packages for families. Amcsi has great resources in the Firms of Connections and other people that have gone through different levels. We'll certainly introduce you to special needs attorneys, and we'll certainly explain the variety of special needs trust funding options. There are way too many times in our travels, pre-COVID days, where we would go to conferences all across the country, and we would have families come up to us and proudly tell us, oh, we've got our special needs planning done, we got a trust. So then the next question we normally ask is, okay, what are you going to put in it? And usually people will start looking up in the air, or they'll start hesitating, and they haven't thought of it yet. And the reason they haven't thought of it yet, because the obvious answer is, I guess whatever's left. But what I want you to recognize is two things. Number one, if you live to your life expectancy, typically the only thing that's going to be left is your house and maybe what's left in your retirement plans. And while those two things could fund a trust, they're two of the more inefficient assets to put in a trust. And two, there are specialized trust funding vehicles that leverage your planning to allow you both flexibility and, more importantly, the peace of mind and security of knowing that when you're gone, you know how that person's going to be taken care of and how that trust gets funded. So, as a bonus, we want to bring up something that's new in the industry that we're being preachers about. We talked about life insurance early in our program. So I want to put you in a situation. And that situation is, God forbid, if you had a critical illness, heart attack, stroke, cancer, or you had a chronic illness where you suddenly needed long-term care. I want you to think about the insurance you have at work, and I want you to think about the insurance that you have individually. And I want you to think about calling up that insurance company and saying, I've had this critical illness, or I need this long-term care. What I'd like for you to do is forward me some of the death benefit. Unless you've purchased your insurance over the last couple of years from the few carriers that have these living benefits, that insurance company is going to tell you, I'm sorry, we do not do that. But I want to tell you, as somebody that's been in this benefits industry for over 30 years, this is the biggest single advancement in life insurance ever. What it does is, if you have any of those things happen to you, you have a chronic illness, you're diagnosed with cancer, you have a heart attack, stroke, now the financial insecurities that are associated with that don't have to damage your overall planning, because now you have the ability to go back to that insurance company and say, I'd like to use some of my death benefit tax-free before I die. And there are 4 companies in the industry that do that. We just want you to know tonight that it's available. And if you've not heard of it, or it's not on your current insurance, learn about it through us, or make sure you learn about it, because eventually all insurance companies should have it, but right now there's a limited few. And when we're talking about trust funding vehicles, that's the ideal vehicle to make sure we include. So, in summary, first, find quality professionals to assist you. We know that in the medical world, you have great doctors and therapists that are part of your community. When we talk about the legal professionals and the financial professionals, find those that can help you. And we recognize and thank you because we remember you're the expert about your dependent. We know that no one knows them, no one advocates for them, and what you do every day, unconsciously competent, is in their best interest. So we want to recognize that and know that even in their long-range planning, that role still stays the same. And when we're talking about taking care of your dependent, when you're no longer here, the two things we want to talk about all the time are a lifetime of care and quality of life. And then lastly, we have all of our information up on the screen. Please visit the website. I think we're going to put a survey in the chat.
It's been there.
Survey's in the chat. Okay. I'm going to ask you to please do the survey at the very least. Number one, we want to show our company that we're talking to real live people. Number two,
Jean's holding hers up.
yes. Number two, thank you, Jean. Number two, if you complete the survey, you can do three things. One, tell us any particular areas that you want information about. Two, if you provide us with a mailing address, Jean's holding up her very own special needs funding kit. And in that special needs funding kit, you're going to get a lot of good stuff. Three things I'll point out to you. One is a one-page special needs quiz. It's listed with easy yes or no questions that you can answer to get you started. Number two, we have brochures. One is an overview on the special needs planning process, which is a great place to start if you haven't, and see what level of services you think you may require or want to learn about. And the most important one to me, because we help develop it, the top most common mistakes families make that we want to make sure you avoid. But if you're willing to provide us with a mailing address, we will get this out to you. Thanks to Elizabeth, it looks terrific. And lastly, if you would like that individual consultation, anyone who's on this workshop, we will talk to you by Zoom, phone, for 20 minutes to answer your personal questions. So you can clarify any issues that may be of a personal nature, and we can address any planning questions that you have. The only thing we're going to ask is that you set that appointment in the next 2 weeks. You don't have to have the meeting in the next 2 weeks, but out of respect to all of our other workshop participants in other areas, we want to give that time frame. So if you work with our team and work with Elizabeth specifically to set up that consultation within the next 2 weeks. It could be August, September, or beyond, but we want to get it on the calendar in the next 2 weeks. Anything I missed?
Just see if she's got any more questions or if
Okay.
we got
Jenny, I'm going to throw it back to you for any questions people might have. Before I do, I hope we're together next year. I can't wait. I want to thank you for sharing time and attention with us. We hope you got something out of it where you're glad you were here, and we're happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Yeah, there's just a few more done. First is we adopted our 6-year-old son through the state of Oklahoma. He is already receiving SSI and Medicaid services.
Tremendous.
Do the inheritance stipulations apply in his case?
They do. Medicaid-related services are universal, meaning that once a person has more than $2,000 of assets in their name, they're immediately disqualified for any of those Medicaid supports. That is why we see too many times families that didn't realize that, or we had a well-intentioned relative that decided it would be nice to leave somebody in their estate, but that person unknowingly disinherits them because now it causes more problems than it was intended to do. So if somebody's receiving SSI and Medicaid as a minor, that's terrific, and thank you, God bless you for adopting. But for long-range planning, when they become an adult, you need to be aware of those things. Excellent question.
Great. Do you work with people in Delaware?
Yes, we work with people all over the country.
Okay.
My speaking arrangements have taken me to various different states. I hope I didn't speak too quick or too bad since I'm from the Northeast, because I know we talk really fast. But yeah, we're happy, and I will tell you, all of us on the workshop probably agree. We're all so much more common and comfortable dealing with virtual meetings and Zooms and onlines than ever before. So thanks to Elizabeth and the development of our process, we have a 4-step process that we help work families through. Step 1 is that initial consultation, which really is, what would you like to happen? And what I jokingly tell our families is, if God called you yesterday and he gave you one day to come back and fix everything that you'd want to fix, what would you want to do? Because that's what we want to find out in that initial consultation. We want to learn all about you, your family, and what you want to happen. Step 2 is measuring where are you now. And that's detailed net worth reports, cash flow analysis, the financial planning stuff. Getting the data together and going through it's not the most exciting part of our process, but accuracy is essential because step 3 is where our work would come in. What strategies can we bring to you without having you to fight for them that are going to improve your outcomes? And they're always going to be based on those 2 things. And that step 4 is implementing what makes the most sense.
Great. Thank you so much, Don. I think we got through all the questions. If not, we can connect with you
No problem. No problem
offline.
at all.
But thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. And again, Michelle, Jean, Ani, Jenny, thanks so much for your help. We'll look forward to seeing you all soon. And if any questions come up, write them down so you don't forget. And certainly we're happy to address any by email, phone, or in the consults.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And please, everybody, if you would fill out that survey for us, that is the one favor we ask of you.
Yep. Sounds great.
All right. Jenny, thank you very
Yep,
much.
thanks, Don.
We hope we're giving you enough time for your break.
Yes, Jean, how much time? We wanted to take a little break. How much time are we going to put on the timer?
I think we're going to put 5 minutes on the timer for our break. So I'm going to turn on a screen share here. Oop. Music cued a little early there. I'm sorry. So, hopefully everybody can see that timer up on the screen. So Jenny, again, we'll take a brief 5-minute break. The Zoom meeting will stay open, but we will get started with our second speaker here when the timer runs out. Enjoy
Great.
our hold music. I think we are almost running down our clock here. Bear with me while I make sure that movie keeps playing. We don't want to lose our few precious seconds of break time. So Jenny, I just wanted to confirm that you are back and unmuted on the line.
I am here.
Excellent. And Rene, I see you're there and on camera. Could you hit the unmute button? I just want to make sure that we can hear you.
I can.
Oh, fabulous. All right. Well, we have reached the end of our break time. Jenny, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's welcome our second speaker for the evening, Rene Donahoe, who will present on therapy around surgical procedures, a playful mindset to gain functional skills. A little bit about Rene. She is a pediatric physical therapist and clinical specialist with Nemours Alfred I. DuPont Hospital for Children, where she participates in many of the hospital's orthopedic specialty clinics. She has been the primary physical therapist in the arthrogryposis program at the hospital since 1989 and the clubfoot program since 2009. Rene also spent over 20 years working part-time as a preschool and school-based physical therapist. In her free time, Dr. Donohoe has authored 17 textbooks, chapters related to physical therapy for arthrogryposis, club feet, and osteogenesis imperfecta, as well as those related to adaptive sports, recreation, ambulatory assistive devices, and activity of daily living supports. She is actively involved in research involving AMC and has been involved with multiple published research papers. She has had the opportunity to lecture both nationally and internationally on AMC. So Rene, you can go ahead and share your slides and welcome.
Let's see if I can share my screen. I am going to share. Okay. Can you see it? Not yet. There. Can you see it now?
I think it's coming. Now I can. Yep.
Okay. So thank you for inviting me today. You know, I love to come to conference and share. I really hope that we can do it in person soon because, you know, I really hate this online stuff. But I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm really hoping that you'll be able to take some sort of nugget information from this talk today. Thank you, Amcsi, for always thinking about me. Let's see if I can move forwards on my slides. So most who have arthrogryposis have some sort of surgery at some point in time. And we all know it's scary. We all know it's stressful. There's a lot of responsibility that goes around the procedure. There's a lot of planning that helps, but over planning adds to the stress. Knowing strategies helps everyone. When I talk about responsibilities, it could be family obligations, it could be work, it could be scheduling aspects, it could be travel, it could be school. There's so many things that go into the decision making when it comes to surgical intervention. My disclosures for tonight are that I really have no disclosures except I'm always nervous when we're embarking on surgery. I think of every child that comes to see us in clinic as one of my own, and I try to put my feet in those shoes thinking about what impact that has, and it stresses me out. And I do believe that there's a right time for the right surgery, but it's a process, and I work hard to make sure that we got the right process to meet the family needs, the child needs, and maximize potential. So the objectives for this talk are to identify the timing of the most common surgeries, but we're not going to name specific surgeries. I'm going to identify some of the challenges that patients and their families have with surgical intervention. I'm going to work on strategies to support a therapy without becoming the therapist, because I think it's really unfair to ask a parent to be a therapist. I want to identify functional activities that meet goals without being perceived as exercise. Parents and caregivers in the home should be play engineers. The goal is to make positive memories and joy opportunities that enhance mobility and play. when I think about PT, I'm about par with the dentist when it comes to adversity. And, you know, I want the families to be thought of as the fun activities. I want the positive memories. I want to set up play so the child's job can be completed. Even if you have a degree to support being a therapist, you should not be the primary therapist for the child. You should be enhancing opportunities for play and function. Now, I talk about play because play is a child's work, and the National Association for Education of Young Children talks about play at length. And children learn through play. It's healthy. It's their work. Play helps reduce stress, and actually it helps reduce stress not only with the child but also with the parent, because it becomes not so tenuous when you're doing something. Play is more than it meets the eye, because it can be dramatic play, it can be symbolic, it can be rule following, it can be functional, it can be turn taking. When you make time for play, you're making time for the child's work. Play goes hand in hand with learning. It's kind of like if you go to a science class and then you take for the lecture and then follow up with the lab. Play is the child's lab. They're learning it with it. When you play outside, you're really enhancing a child's abilities, because you're working on balance challenges, you're working on mobility, you're working on things that they wouldn't normally have. And it's like building forts, playing on the beach, sledding in the winter, skipping stones in the river, helping to do things in the garden, playing with the neighborhood children. It all counts. There's a lot to learn about play. There's a lot written about it and a lot of research about it. But you should trust your own instincts about play and give kids time to figure out how to do it themselves, and like set them up, set the stage so they can do it. And play is the context for learning. And so if you supply them with rich opportunities, then you give them better self-esteem and better success in learning. Your picture should not show up in the dictionary under no fun. That's where my picture goes. Play, it challenges the context of how everyone is feeling about an activity. It goes from us using words rather than whines. It goes from giggles to giggles rather than tears. It's positive anticipation rather than dread of the next activity. When I was driving home from vacation last week, I listened to a thing on NPR, and it was a woman by the name of Katie Milkman, and she was talking about how to enhance dreaded activities, and she calls it temptation bundling, and there's a link there, and it's linking the positives that you do to something that's not so positive, so then that way you have something to look forward to while you're doing it. And I think that that's a really important component when you're doing post-op rehab. So linking positive activities to the less pleasurable things helps gain compliance. If you use electronic devices as a reward for good work, that helps. If you create movement opportunities by putting things just out of reach for something that they really want to do, that's great. You play games. My favorite is hide and go seek. It works up, down, in and out. I love the I'm gonna get you tickle things. I love tossing activities and peer related ball activities. Anything that you can do to hide the fact that you're doing physical activity, but in all reality, you're doing what's fun. So let's talk about certain age groups and what's going on and what happens. So for babies, the most typical things that happen are tendo Achilles lengthenings. We do lots of serial casting. On the really young that have extended knees, the new thing that's coming up is a quads lengthening. It has promising information for babies. So if you have a 3-year-old at this point, that's not a discussion here. And sometimes we'll do hip interventions with babies. And so there's a lot of stress that goes on with it. But the nice thing about babies is there's lots of information on the internet. We often will have kids in long leg casts or Spica casts. And although you're in the middle of it, you don't believe it, it's probably the easiest time in their life to be able to have them in such casts and immobilized, because they're not quite moving yet, and they sleep a little bit more than a teenager, and they are able to be diverted by a few things here and there. And I think it's a little bit easier. Most importantly, they're easier to pick up. They're easier to position. There's lots of problem solving on the internet, lots of clothing options, lots of positioning devices, and a lot of the infant equipment really does work with the kids that have casts. And so you don't have to buy anything really expensive to make it so you can position your child. Let's talk about the dreaded Spica cast, though, because you go to an orthopedic surgeon and they say, we're going to take care of this hip and you're going to be in a Spica cast. And it's enough to take your breath away, because it's a big cast and it's really stressful and it could be weeks. And I actually have a section on my Pinterest page that's dedicated to Spica casts that might help. But things that you have to consider are travel. And positioning outside of like when they're not in bed. So things to get them upright. Entertainment factors for a child that is immobilized in a cast. How in the world do you keep them clean? And what happens after cast removal? So there's, hopefully your hospital will help you if you have an infant that's looking at a Spica cast. For the travel aspects, many times for small children, they try to get them in their personal car seats, but then sometimes you might get a loaner car seat. Positioning after surgery, you can pick them up and move them around, which is really nice. Beanbag chairs help, but even play in the sink over the edge of the sink and being able to be moved around, it helps with the entertainment. Keeping them clean, they diaper, and you use sanitary pads to keep the edges clean and a little bit of duct tape. And although it's big, bad, and ugly, it's nowhere near as ugly as putting a 10-year-old in a Spica cast. After cast removal, what's often not really well expressed is that no one tells you that it gets harder initially when they take the cast off. You anticipate so much when they're going to put the cast on, but nobody tells you that when they take the cast off, they're going to put you on a brace and they're going to ask you to move, and it's scary and it's hard. And the first week and a half, it's really hard, but it gets better. And I find that if you spend the first couple of weeks in an aquatic environment and the bathtub counts, that helps. On there is my Pinterest page, and there is a group that looks at Spica casts. One of the things that I think is really important to invest in is a nice circle swing and a tricycle. And even if your child doesn't reach the pedals of the tricycle that has handles, and some of them will have like a chest support, so it holds around them, you can push them around. The circle swing, you can put a baby in a Spica cast, you can put a 6-year-old in a Spica cast on that circle swing. So it gives them movement opportunities, which is really nice. One of my recommendations for infants and small children is to make stretching part of life, because I think that when you go into having a child with arthrogryposis, they say you have to stretch everything and you have to stretch it all the time, and stretching is really important, but a lot of times you lose sight of playing with the baby. So you really should try to focus on certain times of the day that make it makes sense. So if you're bottle feeding or breastfeeding, play with the upper body, stretch, tickle, wiggle. And it's a nice time to play with hands. Diaper changes, put some love on those legs. Wiggle them, get a little bit of stretching. If you're using a front carrier, it's a natural way that you can pick a body part and just play with it while you're doing stuff. I also like a front carrier because you can put their feet on a table and play with weight bearing a little bit. I love action songs when you do range of motion, and like you can have special songs that work on special things, because I think that if you're doing action songs, there's a start and a finish. And so the child knows, oh, we're going to sing this song and it's part of what you do, versus we're going to stretch. I love a good baby music class or a story time class because they always pepper movement into these classes. There's peers that are typically developing, and they're appropriately challenging for a child that has no cognitive deficits, or even if they do have cognitive deficits. And it gives them peer models. And you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. And oh, wait, you're able to pepper in some range of motion activities without even thinking about it, because it's just what you do. I think that bath time should be messy. Now, I did have a child and she is grown, but we did have messy play at bath time. It's really important to splash, play, kick, use your arms, play with toys, let the siblings come in and be part of it. They can, when the child is small, you can have the siblings help hold the baby up. When the child gets bigger, they can start being responsible for a younger sibling. You know, just let bath time be bath time as it normally would. It's all seems so hard, and in the same breath, it's just, you're in the middle of chaos, and it will get easier. But just remember, play with the baby. So at this point, I'm going to take questions, because I think that what you ask questions about for babies are vastly different than what you ask for older kids.
All right. Well, first, just a couple general comments. First of all, Rene, everyone agreed that they would love to be in person too. So lots of comments on that. I feel like there's a good story here. This comment says Rene's favorite activity is human bowling. So
No. Human bowling. It's all about how you sell it.
All right. Oh,
But it's a good balance activity.
all right. So a couple questions. Let me see here. Can you repeat that for the new parents in the back? It will get easier. Oh, sorry, another comment.
Absolutely. When you have a baby that you don't expect to have arthrogryposis, hence not adopted. Because if you adopt a baby that has arthrogryposis, you know what you're getting into. But if you have a pregnancy and it produces an amazing child with arthrogryposis, the first thing that happens is you're overwhelmed with the shock of what you own. And it's really scary, because when they come out, they look vastly different than any other typically developing baby. And you think, oh my goodness, how are they going to do? And, you know, that's the worst they're going to look. They're only going to look better as long as we stay on top of being diligent on keeping them unwinding. And, you know, if you can't get in for care in the first couple of weeks, it's really okay, because that's time that you get to figure out who your baby is. You get to figure out what those cries are and what it looks like. And you get to figure out what makes them happy before we start doing things like casting and talking about things like surgical intervention to improve alignment. No surgery needs to be done today. what has to happen is that we need to plan for the future, and it gets better, and we get better at networking and at planning, and hopefully it gets easier.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Any tips or tools on keeping cast clean during water play? The garbage bag is not working.
I would make a like a over the top trash bag that fits into the cast itself, and then tape around it or saran wrap around it so nothing can get in. So it's kind of like you have a plastic bag skirt and then you saran wrap around the top of it. Sounds enjoyable, doesn't it?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
But it may help.
So somebody had mentioned that they're having kind of the opposite problem where the therapist is the fun one, but then they're the meanies, kind of forcing the stretching and splinting. Do you have any advice on kind of how to invert that?
They need to have a conversation with the therapist that it's really important that they help you be more fun and less structure, that they would like them to hold some of the responsibility. You know, it in my book, it should never be distasteful. It should always be enjoyable, both. But when you come to therapy, your job is to do your job. And so your job is to work hard for that hour. And when you go home, your job is to be an active family member. And an active family member is an active participant in play and what they do. So I think that you need to have a conversation with the therapist about how can they help you do better with putting it down a little bit and let them pick it up a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Do you have more?
Maybe just one more, and just a comment that somebody suggested saran wrap press and peel as a bottom layer for the person who was talking about keeping dry.
That's a nice idea. Okay, let's go to preschool and toddlers. So things that happen in preschool and toddler years, it's a good time to get elbows and hands in a little better position. So sometimes they'll do a capsulotomy and an elbow release to get a little more bend. They might do things to thumbs. They might entertain wrist alignment. We certainly work on foot alignment, either through casting or bracing, or sometimes there's some extra soft tissue work that ends up happening because they've gone through a big growth spurt, but we really try to keep it at a soft tissue level. But there is casting that goes on throughout the toddler and preschool years. Sometimes we'll do some knee work. If they don't bend very well, it's a really good time before they're 5 to make sure that we get a little more bend. If they don't go all the way straight and they're having problems with their brace fit, it might be a good time to address knees. And we may visit hips again, or the first time. It all depends. I have to say that whenever we talk about hips, it gives me the willies, because I cut my teeth in an environment where if in doubt you leave them out, and the pendulum has swung and we're putting hips in, and so I'm still dancing with that. And I know that families are always tenuous about it, so we may or may not address hips, but often alignment is really important. So if you have somebody that has a externally rotated hip that's flexed and they're ambulatory and it's interfering with their walking, we may address alignment for that. So there's things that will happen. But what I want to happen is some prehab before you start thinking about surgery. You want to make sure that you get them as strong as possible before you get there. You want to talk about what the immobilization is going to look like. You want to make sure that you have medically based therapy intact, as well as the early intervention services, because this is a little different animal than just having gross motor delays. It's a post-op experience. And you want to start thinking about car transfers and how they're going to fit in their car seat. And this is a lovely young lady that I know that she wears a bucket full of braces, but you know, she spends a little bit of time playing at her table, standing in no braces whatsoever. And she works on sit to stand, and it's really good strengthening. I think it's really important to work on standing, kicking, climbing, dancing in advance of surgery. But that could be going to the playground. It could be in the neighborhood, climbing a tree. Let me see if I can get my pointer. You know, I've been given tips on how to get my pointer. Oh, there it is. It could be climbing a tree. I stuck this picture in because this is a rain boot that's on my Pinterest page, and it comes in about 20 bucks, 25 bucks, but it's designed to go on top of an AFO. But if you get it a couple sizes bigger, it fits on top of a cast. So if you have a child that's doing frequent serial casting, that's a nice option to stick on top of the cast so they have a stable surface to keep going. If they're casting below the knee, or even if they're in a long leg straight cast, because that way they can keep going. And I actually, not in this talk, but I have pictures of her hiking with her dad in that boot with casts on. So when you know you're getting into a surgical intervention with a preschooler, a toddler, you need to start thinking about post-op entertainment, because the days are long, the misery can be big, but you can find happiness at the same time. And it really is helpful to have visits from friends and family, especially the cousins. The cousins are great. They're always happy. They're always a good diversion. And I like the super duper prize box. And you know, if you have friends that are gift giving friends, throwing things in a prize box and titrating the gifts over time helps to make it so the child gets rewards for good work, and they're not getting a bucket load of gifts all at one time. And it helps motivate, and you can help direct what you want in that box to help your process. And you know, sometimes it's it may be a Happy Meal toy that somebody had that they know they don't want. It could be something from the dollar store. It could be a bathing suit that you know you're going to need. It could be just about anything, but keep it small, because that way you can use that as rewards after hard work. And sometimes getting something out of the prize box is as much of a reward for you as it is for the child, because you guys finished the task and you were successful and you got rewarded. When you're coming up to a surgery, I find that having an immobilization doll that wears a cast of some sort helps to teach the child what to expect. Dolly's going to have the same sort of cast, and Dolly's going to get her cast off. And being able to see what that cast looks like before it becomes part of them helps make the process a little bit less scary for somebody. It might be less scary for you. It might be less scary for your child. I don't know. So let's talk about the super duper prize box. It really doesn't have to be super duper. It's a marketing technique. It's filled with stuff that you may or may not need. Keep it small. Think dollar store and Five Below. Think about things that you would want. If your child has enough dexterity, wrap each gift. So then that way you can add to the suspense and the time frame that it takes to get to the gift. If you're doing snacks in there, keep the portion size small because you don't want a limited mobility to become a large child. You don't have to have a theme for the box. It could be just about anything. If there's two pieces to something, like a water pistol or a Nerf rocket or something like that, you can have one piece in the box and then hide the other one someplace else and pull it out so you can play together. And the prize box will change with age. And here are some examples, like a fidget spinner, a bracelet, a ball. My favorite, the negative energy vac. Now I'm going to this is a dollar store item. I probably have 15 of them sitting on my desk right now. And one of my friends has renamed it the NEV, as in negative energy vac. But I think that being able to generate your negative energy away is quite helpful. Sunglasses, a water pistol, you never know what's going to come out of the prize box. That's one of the wonderful things about the super duper prize box. So post-op, there's 3 levels of care. There's immediate plan of care, which gets you out of the hospital. There's what you do at home. And then there's when the immobilization comes off. So in the hospital, you're going to work on pain management. There's things you have to do in order to go home. Usually it's you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to pee, you have to, well, poop is negotiable, but it's nice if you get that too. And really importantly, you shouldn't run a fever because they're not going to send you home with a fever. Families trained on how to do bed mobility and transfers, and we work on strategies on getting home. If they need to sit, they need to sit the length of the travel plus a little bit. We look at the present car seat, and if it doesn't work, we work on strategies to get that right. If they're not allowed to sit in their car seat, or if it doesn't fit, then we need to work on other strategies. And sometimes that's a harness, sometimes it's a loaner car seat. But at this age, everybody needs to use some sort of device for safety because they're not big enough, and the hospital should help you with the process. Once you go home, you're going to need work on strategies for positioning and comfort. You need to be working on in and out of bed and other positioning options and in and out of the car, because you have to go back for appointments. And, you know, a lot of times those transfers are the most stressful for everybody. And I find that you talk them through it. You have a song that you sing when we're getting out of bed. You have an expectation when we change positions, and make sure the child knows, because many of these kids are completely cognitively on target, and they do really well with a heads up and an expectation. We need to work on bathing and toileting strategies. Kids that are often toilet trained, if they're in the 3 to 4 year old range, may go into diapers, and if they have a big cast, until they're able to transfer more comfortably. And you tell them that's okay, because it will be okay. It's important to get past just lying down, although it's really important to work on edema management, because swelling really causes pain, and you want to keep that under control. Also, pain management. It's not uncommon for pain to spike in the middle of the night, that with normal circadian rhythm. So you want to make sure you're on top of pain meds. If you're not going to make your child an addict, if they gave you pain meds, it's okay to use them. You want to use entertainment, but my mind is you want to use entertainment appropriately. You want to use manipulatives if possible. Try to limit screen time if possible, just because every other kid is doing play with toys, not necessarily play with screens. For those that have range of motion expectations, so this is my friend who had some knee surgery, and we were bending her knees part of the time and straightening her knees the other part of the time. And it's really important to start slowly and gently, but be consistent. So you say, we're going to go this far and we're going to hold it, and maybe get them into a position and do something fun while you're in that position. And set her up with a scooter board to keep her steady and hips straight, but be able to bend her knees. And then when her knees were straight, I put her on my plasma car, because one of the things that was really frustrating to her was she was completely mobile before surgery. And then all of a sudden we made it so she couldn't move. And then giving her something that would help with mobility helped change the mindset a little bit. So you have to be a little creative. And sometimes if you are a little creative before surgery, it helps be creative after surgery. When it's time to take off the cast, prepare the child, because you know the cast, although it will never hurt them, is noisy and it's scary. And so you need to make sure that they are ready for it. And often I like my doll, that we can say, oh, we're going to take the doll's cast off. And my friend that was on the scooter board, the first time we did a cast change, she was completely overwhelmed. The second time we did a cast change, before they came in, Barbie got a cast change, and it changed the appointment dramatically. Also, a little bit of pain meds goes a long way. So pain meds before, carry them with you to your appointment. Some days you are really long at the hospital, and sometimes you run out of pain meds before you get in the car. So make sure you bring it with you. And often when you're thinking, I'm getting out of the cast today, that may not mean that you're completely out of the cast. If a brace doesn't fit, or if things aren't quite exactly what they wanted, they may send you home and a shell of a cast, or a bivalve cast, which is the cast cut in half and then put back together. And it's not a sad thing, it's just a thing. When the cast finally comes off, car transfers change. It goes from being very predictable, your legs are here and they're going to go there, to your legs move a lot differently, or your arms move a lot differently, and we have to go a little slower. Kids are going to be anxious about moving, and you are too. And so take it slow, take deep breaths, plan for it, and remind them that they've been sitting in a car seat since they were born. It will be okay. Make sure you get therapy started, reward the child for hard work. And if the child talks, encourage them to use words when they're upset. Encourage them to say why they're crying. Are they scared? Are they sore? If they're sore, where are they sore? If they can convey what's going on using words rather than tears, it helps everybody feel better about what's going on, because you can address what's going on. If you're scared, we'll talk you through it. If it hurts, we're going to address it. But go slow and listen to them. So when you're at home, and the doctor says, it's time, you have to do range of motion, and you have to work on walking, and you have to work on standing, and you have to work on this, and you have to work on that, and you're feeling overwhelmed, set reasonable expectations. Those reasonable expectations are for you and for the child, because you may feel like you're not doing enough, but you are. And when you say you're going to be done, you're done. Come back to it later. If there's an opportunity for a prize, set that up as the incentive before you start, especially if you're going to be doing something that's less enjoyable. Chat about what could possibly come out of that super duper prize box. Do not remove a reward that you offered if they didn't do as good as you felt they should be doing, because they did. And the goal is they should do. If I try to avoid counting and timers if possible, because I think that sometimes it sets an expectation that's bigger than the child or smaller than the child. I would like to listen to them and support what they do. And it may be shorter or it may be longer based on how they're doing at that moment. And that could change during the day. They may have a better time of the day that they do more things, and a time of the day that you're going through the paces. And, you know, listen to your child. You know who they are. Don't stress yourself out. You're the parent. It's going to work. They're going to do well. Just get there. And, you know, if the child has incentive by meeting grandmom and grandpop on FaceTime to show off what they just did, do that. Because, you know, that may be the squeak to get a little extra if they're doing really good that day. Let's show grandmom that you stood for, and see how long you can stand for her. Make it a family affair. So what are the goals post-op? The goals are to get back to baseline as soon as possible, get to better mobility, have comfortable bracing, because you can't do anything if your braces aren't comfortable. To be able to play on the floor, because kids at this age all play on the floor, and they should be able to move on the floor, and they should be able to access their preferred play activities. And expand their play activities. So you want to do ball play, you want to do walking to knock down towers, you want to play hide and go seek. Again, it's up, down, in, and out. If you're working on balance skills, I like red light, green light. In this age group, I usually call it the stop and go game, because red light, green light is a little harder to understand. So I call it the stop and go game, but it's the same thing. We're going to take some steps, and we're going to call stop and see if they can balance. I love water play because I think it's really important. Let's talk about the dreaded Spica Cast at this age. Travel may be a little more challenging because the car seat may not fit, and you might need a hospital car seat for that. Positioning is a little bit different because the child's a little bit heavier, and you're going to have to get them on and off of a lower surface, such as a beanbag chair. Entertainment strategies change because their currency changes as they get a little bit older. So I encourage you not to do all screen time all the time, but to try to come up with creative arts and crafts activities with a child that has the opportunity for sitting. They do make Spica Cast chairs that have tables that are really great for arts and crafts activities. No one ever tells you how much. Oh, wait, I'm keeping it clean. One of the conversations, I have a video coming. One of the conversations that I had today was with boys, they tend to pee up. So you really need to do lots of padding above more than down, where girls pee down into the diaper, boys pee up. So make sure that you put a lot of feminine hygiene pads in there to help soak up the stuff. And hopefully that will help. Nobody ever tells you that when you take a toddler out of a cast, it's much harder than it was before the cast. But it gets better pretty fast. And again, let's talk about getting into water, because the water makes the difference. So I have this very creative families, and this one family, let's see if my video is going to work. Oh, tell me it's not going to work. Let's see if I can get it to turn off my pointer and see if it will work.
Yeah.
Then.
Rene, if you turned off your pointer, that should do it.
So this is my friend. They have a family parade going on with a tricycle that he's riding around in his tricycle, and everybody's really happy. And it was a good diversion. And look, it works on trunk, and it's great. And then the siblings were really great because they set up a water fight. So he's sitting in his tricycle, and the family's outside, and they're squirting. And this is a great opportunity to keep everybody entertained all at the same time, which is a family goal. Oh, Am I going to get past? Okay. So one of the things that I like to try to push my docs for is that if a child's going to kindergarten in person, we really try to avoid surgical intervention at that point in time. We want them to start a new school, and we want the school to know who they are as a person before adding mobility challenges and post-operative needs to the educational experience. I just feel like these kids are really smart, and they're very endearing, and they are savvy. And I want the teacher to know who they are before they're sad after a surgery, because it will set up the school experience a little bit differently. But if you're homeschooled, it's a different conversation. So time for questions.
All right. Yes, we have lots of good comments and
So
questions in
we're
here.
heading to school age after this. So your time
Okay.
now for preschool.
Okay. Yeah. So first question is prehab a real term? Will my PT know what that is if I ask about it?
Absolutely. They'll know what prehab is.
Okay, great. And then when you're commenting on the rewards, so you're saying any motion is good and we should reward it even if they didn't stretch as long or as far as we needed to.
No, what I'm saying is that you should set up the expectation with the child and say, this is what we're working for. And when we finish, this is what's going to happen. So, and a lot of times I'll say, we're going to do this and we're not going to have any tears, or we're going to limit our tears. You're going to use your words and we're going to do this. And then you get an opportunity to pick a prize out of the box. Now, you can be creative in your super duper prize box, and you can have the wonky gifts in one box and put in the really good things on another box, and or add in when they're not looking so they can get a better prize if they've had a really good day. But I think that rewards help a lot.
Great. Any tips for diaper changes in the brace after a Spica cast?
I wish I could say yes, but I'm really bad at that. I think that if you talk to your physician and the support staff that works with the physician, they do that every single day, and they have really good tips. I'm really bad at that. I apologize.
No problem. We had some shout outs for the NEV. Somebody said to put up little candies up high that helps their AMCer kind of reach up and grab it as one of the rewards that's worked for them.
Yeah, and that's in lieu of the super duper prize box, because you can't work for two prizes.
Mm-hmm. We'll do the last one and then we can keep going. Somebody said I had to step away, but did Rene mention the use of a beanbag chair for positioning? Okay. And there, yeah, she just wanted to continue to say that that's fantastic and it's been a good thing for them. All right. I think the rest are for a little bit older, so we can keep going.
We're getting there. We're heading into school age. Okay, so for school age, we're going to work on aligning upper extremities for function. Sometimes we'll align hands, we'll align from the elbow for power. We may or may not. We may align the humerus to get the hands so they're facing together. We'll definitely address feet with every growth spurt as needed. But kids that have really rotten feet, or as I like to call them, crummy feet, that we keep having to recast and recast, school age time is when we start talking about surgical procedures, including bony intervention, to get that foot in a little better alignment. We'll talk about knees, and sometimes we'll do some knee surgery to get legs straighter, rarely are we working at school age to get more bend. It's usually straighter, but we may be working to get patellas in better alignment because they may be subluxing laterally. The scary time is at this point, spines become more of an issue. And so we start talking about spinal intervention. Kids that have a limb length discrepancy, we may talk about limb equalization. It's a time of really rapid growth spurts, and and things creep up really quickly. But the child should be an active participant in the process of the surgical intervention. There should be no surgical surprises for a school-age child. They should know going in, this is what we're going to do, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to happen, and this is going to be the expectation. Because if they know what's going on, they'll be better at being an active participant in the rehab. And with a bigger child and more things going on, you really need them to be an active participant. So again, prehab, work on strengthening in advance of surgery, work on things to help you get better at what you're going to do, like car transfers or trying out a walker that you may not typically use. Let school know that there's going to be a plan for surgery and help them get ready for it, because there's going to be school issues if it's done during the school year. And even if it's done during the summer, when they go back in the fall, there may be some mobility issues. So you really want them to know. You want to make sure you start thinking about post-op entertainment, visits from friends, family, cousins. Start thinking about the super duper prize box. And it changes at this age because the ante is up. These kids are more expensive, and so you have to change what the reward system looks like. But if post-op you have family friends that are thinking that they want to give some gifts, you might want to give them some direction on what to help with that, and we'll get to that. So post-op, again, it's the immediate post plan of care to get you out the door, the immobilization when at home and when you're ready to mobilize. And you know, you go home with something like 2 external fixators on your legs, and that's really hard for everybody in the house. And so you have to plan, especially if you have stairs in your house. You might want to make a first floor setup because nobody's going upstairs this week. So immediately after surgery, you got to do pain management. And usually with this age group, it's a little more challenging than the younger age group, because it needs to transfer to a oral med, and that you need to make sure it goes in. They need to be able to eat, drink, pee, poop. You need to know how you're going to get them to get to the bathroom, and what that strategy is going to be. You need to be working on bed mobility and transfers, because when you go home, you're on your own. So you need to have them help you get there. The personal wheelchair may need adaptations, or you might need a rental wheelchair to get there. Once you get home, you're going to need strategies for sitting endurance, and you're going to need some sort of restraint in the car. Even if they're at a seatbelt level, if they can't sit with their feet down, you might have to long sit. And so you have to talk about the strategies for management of a car. But often if it's a bigger child, I like the front seat and recline the front seat back to get home. But they have to be past the car seat level. So once you're at home, you have to work on strategies for positioning for comfort. And that doesn't mean that you sit in bed all the time. You have to get up, and you have to be an active family member, because the more you get up and out of your bedroom or out of the bed that's in the middle of the dining room, the more you start feeling like a human being again, and that helps. And it also helps with getting used to doing transfers and getting used to moving, because you're going to have to get in and out of the car to go back to the doctor, and that's going to be hard. And you're going to have to go in and out of the car to go to therapy, and that's going to be hard. But the more you do a little bit at home, the easier it gets to do that. Bathing and toileting strategies, depending on what they have in the way of immobilization, may be challenging, and kids can get pretty stink-a-link. So that use your bathing strategies as help me do the bed bath, help me do this for you. You too can be an active participant in this. You need to get past just lying down and playing on electronics. Sometimes it's let's do the bed bath and then you can have electronics. Key edema management is really important because swelling causes pain. And so you can't have, if they've had lower leg surgery, you can't have feet down all the time. If they've had an arm surgery, you can't have arms down all the time. You really have to work on positions that will get things against gravity to help move the edema. Pain management's important. Again, remember, pain spikes in the middle of the night, medicate appropriately, but also use diversion, use friends and family, use electronics when pain is bad to help get through there. If there's range of motion expectations, go slow but gentle but consistent, and give them a good heads up. And I know I said that before, but it becomes a different animal when you have an older child. And I seem to repeat the same theme over and over again, but with maturity in school, there's different challenges, and this is a hard stage, and it really does require a village of support to help you get through it. And at this point, peers, if they have a good peer group, you really want to use that peer group to help you. So rules in the house should be, number one, you have to be nice, and it goes both ways. Pain makes somebody grumpy. Sleep deprivation makes everybody grumpy. Pain peaks in the middle of the night. And just because you had surgery does not mean that you're allowed to be mean. Being nice is a family expectation. Rule number two, we have no pity parties here. We happily celebrate success. We use friends and family to join in celebration. We focus on where we're going rather than where you are right now. And we reward frequently for amazing compliance. Like that, amazing compliance. So rewards. Electronics should typically comply with the family limits. Whatever your family limits are, that's what they should be doing too, no matter what the surgical intervention is, except if you're doing something that's distasteful, so like cast removal, wound care, passive stretching. And you can always put electronic time in the super duper prize box. Who doesn't like a reward for hard work? So things that change in the super duper prize box include the free pass to electronics, include personal choice family night videos. Again, if people are giving gift cards, I would prefer that they have a brick and mortar store and not shop online. So then that way you can say, oh, you got that gift card for Five Below, or you got that gift card for Target. Let's go there and pick it out. So then that way you have a movement opportunity to get going. And save those gift cards. Save those for really good behavior. And save them for something that you really want. As the child's getting stronger and doing more, you might want to put a scavenger hunt in the box, and they have to go look for the prize. So then that way you're feeding a little more activity onto the prize, or feeding the activity for the prize without telling them that that's what it is. Let's do a scavenger hunt. You're going to get a prize at the end. Post-op, when you're ready to mobilize, get the child ready for the cast removal. And this is an age where if they go home in a shell, they're pretty sad. So you should prepare them. It might not completely come off. What if the brace doesn't fit well? So you need to make sure you do that. Car transfers are going to be different. They're going to be harder, but then they're going to be easier pretty fast. Kids are going to be really anxious about moving, and you want to reassure them that it gets easier, even though everybody wants to go home and cry at the same time. Get your therapy started as soon as you can. Encourage the child to use words to convey frustration and to orchestrate their care, and have them say, this is how you should move my leg, or we'll count to 10 and it should be done by then, or this pinch is here, help me make sure you don't pinch it. They should be able to convey what's going on. So things that I really like are swimming. And this is a guy that told me, I'm going to go ride a tricycle. And he's a pretty weak guy. And you never shortchange kids on what they say they're going to do, because sometimes they really surprise you. Never underestimate the power of an AMCer, but I really love a tricycle if they have enough range, because it's a really good strengthening activity. It gives them the other mobility. So set reasonable expectations. Again, when you're done, you're done. Don't get mad at them if they've done their work, even if it's not as good as you expected it to be. Do not remove the reward if they've done the task, even if it's not as pretty as you'd like it to be. Although, be really kind if they've been really good. Like, you might find that better gift in the prize box. Count and set timers if that's who your child is, but try not to. Use FaceTime to if the child likes that, to show other people what's going on. Invite friends over to work on mobility things, play games that are not electronically motivated, unless that's what came out of the prize box. And that could be invite friend over to play games. And use friends electronically to motivate for rewards. The goal is to get back to baseline as soon as possible, get better mobility, look towards independent living in the future, enhance skills, have comfortable braces, be able to help with transfers as soon as possible. Your back can't afford all those transfers. If they had been transferring before, they need to do it. Be able to access play activities, get back to being an active family member and in their circle of friends as fast as possible. If your child's staying home in the upcoming school year, this is one caveat that's not necessarily surgery related, but just related. If children that go to school move 6 to 10 times a day for 5 to 15 minutes at a time. And so it's really important that your child moves multiple times during the day and that they have different seating options. So an adjustable desk that they can stand at or perch sit, as well as sit lower, helps to encourage movement and position options. Prior to surgery, if the child played on the floor, create opportunities for floor play. If you put toys out of reach, including electronics, that helps with active range of motion. One of the things I like to do is put things down towards their feet, because I want kids to be able to reach their feet to put on their shoes and socks. So I like to put things just a little bit out of reach. So if they can get that down there, they can get to their foot to put their sock on at some point. Play hide and go seek. It works up, down, in and out. It can be a family game. Consider ride-on toys that enhance strengthening opportunities, but keep it age appropriate. Use shopping as an opportunity to work on mobility. This is one of my friends who has kind of been branded Mad Dog, and he had surgical intervention. And prior to surgery, he was golfing, snowboarding, and he was doing a small rock wall at home. But after surgery, he is doing even bigger and crazier things, and it's pretty exciting to watch. So in pandemic, my friends have gotten a little bit less active, and TikTok became very hot. And I had a parent send me a video and say, my daughter is really uncomfortable at the end of the night. And I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, well, she's doing TikTok dances all the time. And I love it, because this is a girl that uses a walker to walk during the day, and she wears braces. And usually at the end of the day, she's really tired. And here she's doing TikTok dances and practicing and then recording them. It's wonderful. So I hope that helps. Do you have questions?
Yes, we do. Any tips on how to get a pre-adolescent schooler to dedicate time to stretching and or keep their splints up with upcoming surgeries?
Um, I think that you are an active participant of your rehab process, and if you do more before you go to surgery, you'll do better after surgery. And these kids are smart and they are strong-willed, and sometimes it's wear one splint one side, one splint the other side. Sometimes it's changed the time of day that you're wearing the splint. Sometimes the stretching may have to involve putting something that's enjoyable, matching it. What did I call it? At the start of the talk, matching it with something positive and something negative at the same time. So if you have this one show that you really like to watch and nobody else in the house likes it, you can have the main TV and watch it, but you have to be stretching at that point in time. So it gives you that period of time that you're doing it. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. Any suggestions on physiotherapy or muscle stimulation?
um, I am not always the biggest fan of electric stim for muscles on the arthrogrypotic population. And there are a lot of therapists that do not necessarily agree with me. But I use the polio population as my model, and they too have limited motor units that are available. And my fear is that if you stim, you could fatigue out the motor units prematurely. And when I'm working with a child, I don't necessarily know what they're going to look like when they're 40. And I would feel really bad if I made them weaker overall. Now, having said that, if they're braced and the electric stim makes it so they can be in less bracing for a period of time and they end up back in the taller braces later in life, I don't feel so bad about that. But I don't always think about e-stim in this population. I really try to limit that. What was the other part of the question?
Sorry, sorry, I scrolled down too far.
Physiotherapy.
Physiotherapy.
I keep it functional, and really look at what the limitations are, and build strength to build function. And I'm always thinking, how can we get them in a little less bracing? So I'm always thinking about how can I get hips and knees a little bit stronger so they could be a little bit less braced? How can I get biceps a little bit stronger so they can feed themselves if they have the range? So I use strengthening, but with an eye towards function.
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions that are linked to tablets and social media, which I know you've touched on, so I'm going to kind of combine these. But one person said that they have a 12-year-old, and so the play really to them at this point is video games and social media. Kind of how can they make that therapeutic? And the other person was wondering, is there therapeutic value to using a tablet, especially around fine motor skills?
If you're using a tablet in terms of fine motor skills, I'd like a stylus at the same time, or a mouth stick, so then that way they're using a tool to use the tool. I think that electronics has become the bias towards every child, not just every child with arthrogryposis. I think that it's a really hard habit to break. I think that kids need to work on manipulatives, and I feel that if you can get kids with arthrogryposis working on manipulative play of some sort, if you can find something that they will do, even if it's something that came out of the box that they use once, that will translate to better function over time, because it will be a dexterity activity that will translate to a functional skill that will get them more independent living in the future.
Great. Just a few more here. Somebody was wondering if you could talk more about what perch sitting is.
It's when you sit on the edge of a chair. So you open up your hip to axis and put your feet on the floor. Some of my kids don't have 90 degrees of hip flexion. So when they sit, they use their low back to sit and they never get their back straight. And so if they set themselves up for back problems in the future because they don't have the ability to flex their hips. And in that population, I like to talk about getting a saddle seat that tilts. And you say, what's a saddle seat? It is like a triangular seat, so legs go on either side and there's almost like a little pommel between that tilts, and it's what your dental hygienist uses, it's what a tattoo artist uses, but it doesn't have a back on it. So then that way you can open up that hip axis, so if you only have 60 degrees of hip bend, you are sitting at the end range, but your back is still straight.
Great, thank you. When the child comes out of the cast, is there too soon to be moving a joint? And how do I know which joints to start moving post-surgery?
That is a conversation you have with your physician, because mobility is really based on how the x-rays are looking and what the physician comfort is. So you have to take that back to your physician.
Somebody's wondering if Rene would do a hands-on workshop to teach us parents some fun play therapy.
You look up no fun in the dictionary and my picture is there. I really, my job is to get the work done. And my job is to say, you have this hour and this is what we're going to achieve. My job is not to be entertaining. And I have some families that like me for that, and I have some families that really don't like me for that. And I'm okay with that, because not everybody is everybody's flavor. But I think that if you have other kids in the house and you play with the other kids, look at how you play with those and match it, incorporate it, and stop thinking, oh, it's so special. It's not. Everybody gets to play and everybody gets to have a job in the house. And your job is not to be the kid that can't do anything. Your job is to be an active participant in the household.
Great. Just a few more comments to kind of close this out here. Somebody said TikTok is brilliant. They loved seeing that. Somebody said you had recommended their son use a laundry basket in the bathtub, and that was very helpful.
Yeah, it's nice. It keeps all the toys in the one space.
Yeah. And also that they that plans to have a PVC arm sling that would help their son so much when he was younger to play, and referenced your Pinterest page for wonderful suggestions and ideas like that. And then last question, and I can share a couple too here, but there was a question about seeing dolls with some of the casts and things that you had mentioned. If you know where they can get that, someone else had mentioned at Teddy Foot Splint makes them. Somebody else suggested using Aquaplast splints that you can remelt, but do you have any other comments
you know
on that?
what? I use Barbie. I use whatever doll they bring in. Often we'll put an incision on the doll. So then that way, when the cast comes off, the doll also has the same incision. But we use Coban, which is like an elastic type bandage that just is the color of a cast, so that way it's easy to wrap. But it works well. So I have a couple more slides and then I'll be done, I promise. Thanks for hanging tight. So there are no completely correct answers for surgical intervention. The decision that you make is the right decision when it comes to surgery. A caregiver should not be the therapist, but should rather support play and functional skills, which means encourage your child to do their own stuff. Even if they can't, encourage them to do it anyway. The household should embrace independence and play, give time to do that. Use family and friends to support positive reinforcement after surgical intervention. You don't always have to be the cheerleader. The goal of surgical intervention is to improve function, but it often takes time to see that improvement. And sometimes it takes up to 9 months to see a significant improvement. Be patient. Therapists should think biomechanically to support the functional gains. So if they're bending at their hips, give them a heel wedge, so then that way they can stand tall in their braces. This came in my project happiness the other day. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not think, not wonder, not imagine, not obsess. Just breathe and have faith that it will all work out for the best. And I really think that sometimes we forget to breathe and focus on the positive. You have an amazing child. Your child's going to do great things. It's a hard battle right now, but it gets better. Sometimes it gets worse and then gets better. But when you look back, you'll say it was worth every step of the journey. So when I looked out the window one day, I saw this outside the hospital. Obviously, it's not summertime, but I thought it was pretty. And this is just a few of the team members that I work with that work with the Amcsi population. And we love every single kid that comes to see us. It's just really a pleasure and a joy to be part of your lives. And thank you for inviting me to participate today.
Thank you, Rene. Loved the videos. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I didn't see any other questions sneak in, so I think we can wrap up.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thanks. All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This will wrap up our third day of conference. Be sure to register for the remaining days if you haven't already. Again, it's free and open to everyone. Today, this will wrap up our third day of conference. Be sure to register for the remaining days if you haven't already. Again, it's free and open to everyone. Today, this will wrap up our third day of conference. Be sure to register for the remaining days if you haven't already. Again, it's free and open to everyone.
Bear with me, everybody. I'm in a bit of a feedback loop here. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and close out this.
Be sure to register for the remaining days if you haven't already. Again, it's free and open to everyone.
Bear with me, everybody. I'm in a bit of a feedback loop here. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and close out this.
Be sure to register.
All right. So I apologize for that feedback loop there, but Jenny, if you want to come back off of mute and just say your final close to the audience, we can go ahead and wrap things up. Sorry about that.
Yes, sorry, you guys got to hear me several times. I was just saying thank you for joining us. This will wrap up our third day of conference. Please be sure to register for the future sessions. Again, it's free and open to everyone. So I'll turn it to Jean to close us out.
All right. So I want to echo that thank you that went out to everybody, all of our presenters, as well as the attendees who stayed with us right until the very end. Remember, we will carry on with the presentations tomorrow evening, where we will be joined by Dr. Z and a team of presenters. So we'll learn a little bit about telerehabilitation and some other projects, as well as have an upper extremity talk. So we hope that you'll join us same time, same place tomorrow evening. I also did want to remind everybody that the talks are being recorded, but just like Jenny said, to get the most interaction available, we strongly encourage that you register and join us through the live Zoom delivery. We have plenty of space, so I'll keep putting that registration link in the meeting chat, and hopefully you all will be here tomorrow. So with that, we'll do one great big thank you to everybody, all of our speakers, our families, our fabulous support teams in the background, and we are going to call it a night. We hope you had a great time, and we'll see you here tomorrow.